This will be a theology video. Normally I do philosophy videos. This is different. So I was in church, I think it was 9 days ago, and the pastor was talking about the Great Commission. And I looked up the Great Commission in my New Testament Greek app and was fascinated by the tenses. The Greek verbs give you a much clearer picture of what Jesus is talking about here than you could get from just consulting it in English translation. Let's talk about that. We are in Matthew chapter 28 in the New Testament. And, well, I suppose we shouldn't ignore the context. Here's the English Standard Version. The 11 disciples, now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And then here, these two verses are what Christians often refer to as the Great Commission. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. This English translation is just fine. King James probably has a good translation. Lots of English translations are fine. If you have some other language for your first language, probably you have a decent translation there. But the Greek, the original language, is the New Testament Greek, and it's really interesting. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. First, let's talk about something about how Greek tenses work. In English, the first thing about tense is time, and the second thing is sometimes it describes the manner of an action, or if you add some extra helper words, like it's one thing to say I watched Netflix, and it's another thing to say I was watching Netflix. One describes continuing action, it describes a process. The other just describes something that happened. I watched Netflix, I was watching Netflix. You see the difference? And the difference is what I'm trying to illustrate here with these with my amazing technological skills using Microsoft Paint here. In Greek, the type of action is first. It's the first thing tense describes, and only secondarily is time described by Greek tense. Or maybe I shouldn't say primary, secondary, first, second. Maybe I should say the most important thing portrayed by the New Testament Greek tense is some quality of the action other than time, although tense is also how you describe the time of an action in New Testament Greek. And specifically, this is not a complete list of the tenses, but it's the ones we need for the Great Commission. I think I got them all. Specifically, in New Testament Greek, the aorist tense typically describes past action, but the main point of the aorist tense is it describes action considered as a single unit, action considered as just one thing, action considered all in itself as a self-contained unit. As self-contained unit is not the right words, but it considers a complete action. The aorist tense is punctiliar. That's the language I was given when I was studying New Testament Greek in undergrad. The aorist tense in New Testament Greek describes punctiliar action. It describes just a thing that is done, the complete doing of the thing as it's that has been done. The imperfect tense describes past action that's continuous, that's ongoing, that's a process, or that was continuous, that was ongoing, that was a process. So the normal way to translate an aorist verb, let's say it was a verb for watch, and the sentence was something about me having watched Netflix. The normal way to translate a New Testament Greek aorist sentence, a New Testament Greek sentence about me having watched Netflix that was using the aorist tense would be something like this, simply, I watched Netflix. The imperfect tense now would have to be translated something like, I was watching Netflix. The aorist tense describes a point of action. The imperfect tense describes the process of action. The present tense also describes a process, only the present tense describes a process in the present, and the imperfect tense describes a process in the past. Now, these are the tenses we want to have in mind for the Great Commission. Now, let's look at the interlinear. All right, so here we have the Greek. I don't think I know how to zoom in without, I suppose I could adjust the settings here. Nope, I only know how to zoom in this much. Here we have Matthew 28, verse 19. In the Greek, and then verse 20, we have to click on this little arrow to go to a different URL to get to verse 20. So we have the Greek and the English, and we have here the actual Greek letters. Paruthentes mathe tusate panta ta ethne baptidzantes, etc., etc. And then we have the English transliteration here. And then we have the English translation, and then we have this information about the words, in particular, starting here. Paruthentes, having gone, is how it's translated here. Let's check the ESV. The ESV just says, go. This tells us what we're looking at. Well, actually, this tells us what all these letters mean when we look at what we're looking at. But this right here, maybe I use my Zoom screen sharing, my Zoom annotation function. This right here, proper circling of it. This right here tells us what sort of verb form we're looking at. We're looking at this verb, haruamai, verb for going, and we're looking at an aorist participle. An aorist participle, that would be this tense, this one here, the aorist tense, and an aorist tense participle. Now, participles, I don't have time to explain New Testament Greek participles. I don't think I even have the ability to explain New Testament Greek participles. Let it suffice to say that a New Testament Greek participle is a verb that's been turned into a noun or sometimes an adjective. It's more or less like that. It is something you can translate into English frequently. I don't think you can always do this, but frequently it can be translated as an ing word. If I had a participle with a New Testament Greek word for watching, I would probably want to translate it as watching. I was watching Netflix, something like that. But you want to pay attention to the fact that it usually has a noun or maybe an adjectival function. So I was the person who was watching Netflix would be a more literal translation of a Greek participle if I had a participle. Let's talk about this one now. Let's talk about this. This is an aorist participle. Now, actually, we don't want to talk about this aorist participle yet. Let's go to the next verb. What's our next verb? Let's just keep in mind the Holy Spirit is down there at the end of the verse, but let's stay scrolled up here and look at our other verbs. There we go. Let's stay scrolled up here and look at our other verbs. Here's our next verb, and it is an aorist verb. It's just an aorist verb. It's not a participle. And then baptizing, baptidzantes. This is a present participle. Altusais ta anima, to patraskai, to huiukai, to hagiu numatas. Okay, so we only have 3 verbs in this sentence to look at. And we have an aorist participle, we have an aorist, simple aorist verb, and then we have a present participle. Now let's first identify the main verb, and then I'll start actually talking about this sentence and saying interesting things, hopefully. Anyway, I find it very interesting. This participle here, paruthentes, is, I'm going to say you can think of it as an adjective or maybe a predicate nominative. It's describing the quality. It's using a verb, but a participle verb form to describe the quality of the people who are doing the action of the main verb. The main verb is this one. Baptidzantes here, that's another participle describing the quality of the people doing the main action. The main verb here is this disciple. Let's check the vocabulary here. Mathetuo, to make a disciple, to be a disciple, train in discipleship, etc., etc. So I think we may just stick with a straightforward translation, disciple. I think we'll stick with that, probably. I'll stick with disciple. The nearest English alternative translation I can come up with looking at that the ideas conveyed. Looking at this cluster of English words that convey the same idea as is conveyed by this Greek verb, I would say the nearest other English equivalent would be make disciples of. But I think disciple as a verb is probably the best. So the main verb is disciple. And then we have these participles describing what you do, baptizentes, when you're discipling, you're baptizing, and what you do, well, some quality of the people who are doing it. They are people who are going or have gone or something. And now, how do we translate this? This interlinear on the internet's just having gone. What did our ESV say? It just says go. Translates it into a straightforward verb and ignores the tense. But this English here, go, therefore. Therefore, by the way, is un. Paruthentes, is therefore going, but in aorist tense, as an aorist tense participle. This, in the English translation, is considered as just the action of going. But in this suggested translation here in the interlinear, we're emphasizing the past tense, having gone. Well, that's fine. I'm not the expert. I studied under a couple of experts at Dallas Baptist. Let's do this. I wonder if we can make sense of this well with this. I think we might actually try this. Maybe I should just stick with Microsoft Paint. Let's stick with Microsoft Paint. Remember, the aorist tense describes a single action, describes it as a single thing. It describes it as one single event. Now, it's useful to think of the aorist as simply a point, simply a dot. But the aorist tense describes, in this case, an action as a single whole, but it gives so much information about that action. This is why I wanted to record this video. The aorist tense participle here gives so much information about that action that I don't think we can describe it as a point. We have to describe it as a circle. And here is that circle. In fact, let's not draw the circle yet. Let's describe that part. Let's describe that action looking at this participle and suggest this translation. Paruthentes, aorist participle for going. Going. I think that looks about right. The aorist participle for going. I know what to do. The aorist participle here for going is describing the action of going as a single whole. It's this big action of going. It's just one action of going described. I shouldn't be making circles. I should be showing the shape of a circle. It describes this big, it describes as one action, this action of going. It turns out it's a very big action because there's so much going on with the going. Okay, so let me attempt a one-sentence summary of everything we've accomplished so far as I spend too much time trying to explain these things. The Greek tenses, the New Testament Greek tenses used in the Great Commission describe qualities of actions somewhat more than they describe the timing of actions. And this participle here, this first word in the Great Commission, paruthentes, from paruamai, a word for going, is an aorist participle. An aorist is a Greek tense that describes action as a single unit. And this action described as a single unit is describing the people who are doing the action of the main verb in the sentence, which is mathetusate, disciple. So this is how I think we can visualize the verbs in this sentence. Well, the first verb, the aorist participle, going. Jesus is telling us, you people who are going, you do this stuff, making disciples. Now, within the scope of this action considered as a whole, this action of going, there's where we find the main verb. The main verb, again, was disciple, or make disciples of. Remember, this is a verb, not a noun. This is a verb, not a noun. Disciple, or teach, or train, or make disciples of is what Jesus is telling us to do. And he's telling us to do it within the scope of our being the people who are going. You people who are going, make disciples. That's what he's telling us. And while we make disciples, and while we're going, we're also supposed to be baptizing. Okay, so baptizantes. This is a present participle. So in the present tense describes continuous action that's a process, and in the present. So how do we represent that? Well, let's first, oh, hang on. Should I say anything about this? Mathetusate. I left out the tense, didn't I? This is aorist. This is, hopefully you can see the information that pops up when I scroll over these letters. Aorist, imperative, active, second person plural. It's imperative mood, which means it's instruction. He's telling us to do this. And it's aorist, which means it's the tense of singular action. So I should probably try to represent that. Let's see. So disciple, which we remember is a verb for train, teach, make disciples of. And this is an aorist imperative verb. So how do we want to represent that? Let's try another circle. Because again, it's a single action that's being represented here. It's an action that is being represented here as a whole unit. So you people who are going, I'm commanding you to disciple. That's what these verbs are telling us. Now, part of that discipling involves baptizing. And here we have a present. Here we have a present participle. An ing word for translatable into the English ing, translatable using an English ing word. An ing word, ing, describing ongoing action in the present. So let's see, I'm going to have to start using much smaller fonts, I'm afraid. So baptizing. And this is continuing action in the present. So what we have so far, my working understanding of this, and did I mention I'm not an expert? I studied under some. If by any chance my old Greek teacher at Dallas Baptist University should ever come across this video, sir, I want you to have first dibs at critiquing my terrible work here, if indeed it's terrible. Actually, there's a very good chance this is not terrible work, but that it's just, a little bit subtly confused in some respect. Yeah, if that's the case, again, you, sir, Dr. Matos, you have first dibs at correcting me here if you want to, if you ever see this. But anyway, here's my working understanding of it. Parouthentes, mathetusate, baptizantes. Aorist participle, main verb, and present participle. You people who are going, this first participle here is describing the nature of the people who are being given the instructions in the main verb. You people who are going, I command you. You people who are going, I command you, disciple. And while you're discipling, be baptizing. You people who are going, I'm commanding you to disciple and to baptize, to be baptizing. You people who are going, commanding you to disciple, I'm telling you to be baptizing. Now let's look at verse 20. Didaskantes. This will be a present participle. Teaching them, didasko. I think teaching is, I think teach is the only English translation we need for the verb didasko. Instruct is probably an acceptable alternative translation. I think teaching will work just fine. Present participle, and actually teaching, the word teaching, the ing word looks just fine to me. Teaching them to observe all things, whatever I commanded you. And behold, I'm with you always. I'm with you. All the days, until the completion of the age. Oh, that's a nice word, suntalias. I don't know much about this word. In fact, I know basically nothing about this word, except what I'm looking at. Telias. Sorry. Yes, telias. It's connected to the Greek verb telos, which means purpose, end, or goal. Completion is a very nice translation here. I bet fulfillment would be a nice one too, but that's vocabulary. Incidentally, if you just go onto a web browser and Google a Bible verse, Matthew 28:19 or Psalm 1 verse 2 or whatever, and then type in the word interlinear, you should be able to find a nice website like this for the Greek English interlinear for New Testament or the Hebrew English interlinear for the Old Testament. And if you haven't studied the languages, you can't do your best to sort through what the Greek tenses are conveying that's not so clear in the English like I'm doing, but you can at least track down the vocabulary, which is really useful. And me, I don't know the Hebrew, but I can at least track down the vocabulary using that function. Psalm 1 verse 2 interlinear, you can type that and then find the convenient interlinear and at least track down the vocabulary. Maybe you'll learn something about some of the other stuff. Anyway, what are we talking about? Verse 20, the tenses, didaskantes, teaching. All right, this is a present participle. So it's describing ongoing action. And I think it's going to be paralleling baptizing just fine. So here is how the Greek tenses are telling us to understand the verbs in this in the Great Commission so far. You people who are going, I'm instructing you to disciple as you're going. And as you're discipling, or as part of the discipling, be baptizing and be teaching. You people who are going, commanding you to disciple. As part of the discipling, I'm commanding you to be baptizing and to be teaching. Okay, teaching what? Teaching people to observe all things. So I think we should do something with this. This is an infinitive. These are, as far as I'm aware, off the top of my head anyway, you can always translate these in this manner. Terao, put into infinitive form, means to observe. These are things that are always translated into English infinitives to do this thing. If we had didaskain, that would probably be the present infinitive for present active infinitive for didasko, and it would mean to teach. Well, here we have to observe, terao. I think terao could also be translated to keep. So to keep or to observe all things whatsoever I commanded you. Maybe we'll get to I commanded moment. Let's look at this infinitive, to observe, teach them to observe. This, I think this is a form of an object of the teaching. So smaller font. What are we teaching them? We are teaching them to observe. Behold my amazing Microsoft Paint skills. Teaching them to observe whatever Jesus commanded. So you people who are going, I command you to disciple while you're discipling, be baptizing, ongoing process, be teaching, ongoing process, specifically teach all those disciples you're making to observe. And now I'm thinking I'm going to need I need to blow some of this up a bit. I'm a little surprised that worked as well as it did. Now let's try. Let's try rearranging this. There we go. Now we have a little more room. Another one of these squiggly thingies. There we go. The next verb, whatever I commanded you. This is a simple aorist indicative, and you want to trans them. Indicative means declarative mood or just stating facts. An aorist verb, but a very straightforward one. You can translate this as simple past English past tense. Okay, so teaching them to observe all things I commanded you. Okay, so here's my understanding of the verbs as we have them so far. You people who are going, I command you to disciple. And as you disciple, I think as part of the discipling, be baptizing, be teaching, specifically teach all those nations to observe, specifically to observe that which I commanded. And maybe we'll just stop there as far as the Greek verbs go. Behold, I am with you all the days until the completion, the fulfillment of the age. Yeah, it's a separate sentence, so let's stop there. Here is my working understanding of the verbs. Now let me think. I think there may be an interesting way of reconsidering some of this. I'm going to toss this in at the end of the video. This is another way we might be able to consider the way these verbs are arranged conceptually. It might be that we're not supposed to think of the discipling as itself containing the teaching to observe and the baptizing, that we're just supposed to think of it as its own separate thing. So here's an alternative way we could conceive of what's in this text. You people who are going, I command you to disciple, and I command you to be baptizing, to be teaching them, to observe, or to be observing, since it's a present infinitive. We could probably have translated that to be observing if we wanted to teach them to be observing all that I've commanded. With this visualization, I think we have I don't know, I'm going to say it's a plausible way of reading this, but I don't think it's right. Conceptually, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Discipling would have to include teaching, right? Surely it must include teaching, and I don't see any reason why it should include baptizing. I think this is the better visualization. So this is what Jesus is telling us in the Great Commission. You people who are going, be discipling. Sorry, you people who are going, disciple. Which means, among other things, perhaps, be baptizing and be teaching them to be observing all that I have commanded. Now, I hope that this is interesting or edifying for some who may have watched this. Sorry if I talk too long about some of this. Now, I'll say for perhaps the third time, I may have studied long ago under some New Testament Greek experts. I am not one myself. I suggest you do with this what actually I could suggest you do with a whole lot of material on my channel. Take it as a useful introduction to the topic at hand until you find a better one. Take this until you learn better. Thanks for watching. If you feel like it, you should let me know what you think of me doing these theology videos. I hope to do a number more. I don't want to promise anything at this point. Yeah.